They discovered it, they read it, and they applied it. It's the golden thread that connects the titans of the self-development industry, the source that spawned millions of millionaires, the original blueprint to success.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Think and Grow Rich.
Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's a classic. A classic.
And I love Think and Grow Rich. I love it. It's right here. I mean, it's one of my favorite books of all time.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
This material is what changed my life. This is the material I study every day. From being an immigrant woman, coming from poverty, and really coming to America and literally achieving the American dream. I can't even tell you how grateful I am for this man, for what he did for me and my family.
Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
People don't realize is that when we let our ego get in our way, ego is the loss, the fear of loss. So need to be right, the need to be offended, the need to be hurt, fearful. When that trajectory changes, what happens is you continually go the wrong way. So my job as a coach is to say, let's get into the enjoyment of the direct pursuit of my potential. Right? And so when the light went on, it was not about the potential of making money and being an entrepreneur, which is one of my specialties. And I said to him, look, this is an opportunity now to show how great you really are. We can't let the outside voices, right, determine our success. The happiness that we have comes within. Why are you going to give that control to somebody else?
Thoughts become things. And I always wonder, why did no one teach us this? Why did we not learn this in school? Why did we not learn this from our families? If you make your study a priority, your life will change.
And I came up with 4 really valuable things that I took stock in. And the first one was gratitude. Simple gratitude. Although I grew up with nothing, I was always grateful. Throughout the whole process of consistently, persistently pursuing my potential, I was grateful. It made my past better, my present brighter, and my future even brighter than that. In fact, I tell people all the time, if you want to change your life, change your employee's life, your family life, it's very simple. 2 words, say thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Gigi, if you can meet on Clubhouse for me, I'll unmute as I go ahead and just set the room here for today's edition of the Napoleon Hill Institute training. Of course, we're going to be joined by the chairman of the Napoleon Hill Institute here momentarily, Mr. David Meltzer, and his special guest, the double B, that's Blaine Bartlett. Of course, you can reach him at blainebartlett.com. And I see Mr. Meltzer is jumping in here, so I will turn it back over to him. David, I was just about to invite our community to come and join us in person, but of course we'll leave the honors to you, my friend.
Yes, just email me. David means beloved at D, first initial. Meltzer means servant. I'll be your beloved servant. Come and join us in those different cities that Nick articulated. But if you want to be informed and invited, we do have a text community to inform you and invite you to all the free training, meetup, holding court, VIP dinners for charity. We had an amazing one in Las Vegas for season 11. I want to thank my community for raising so much money for such an important cause, the Unstoppable Foundation, which Blaine and I are both on the board of, and bringing on Blaine here to do today's training with me as well. Text me, area code 949-298, the next 3 numbers, last 4 numbers, 2905. I want to welcome Blaine Bartlett, blainebartlett.com, my mentor, teacher, and coach, bringing the best out of me with his wisdom and faith. Today's weekly training, Blaine, which everybody can get the guides and exercises for, is reclaiming. I love the pronoun re, right? Remind, recollect, remember, reclaim, resolution. These are all indicative things that already exist. And so we're going to reclaim our power today. And that power includes intelligent power, intellectual power, the inspirational power, the energy power, the intuitive power. We're going to reclaim it, elevate our awareness to it today. Blaine, and I thank you for being here with us. We'll get started, though. So many of us spend years believing our circumstances are what determine our future. We give away our power to the people, events, challenges, conditions, everything outside of us we believe gives us control. It gives us validation and identity. The truth is that while we may not control any circumstance, we control our response. We control our response to every circumstance. Two people can experience the exact same setback, failure, mistake, defining moment. One becomes a victim of the circumstance while the other uses it to reclaim their power, use it as fuel to growth. The difference isn't the situation itself, because although it is constantly training and changing in time, value, and emotion, the difference isn't the circumstance. It's the same for everyone. It's the level of ownership, of accountability, of what did we do to be responsible, what did we do to attract it, what did we do to participate in the perception that created the response, the reclaiming of each person that they choose to take. Accountability, responsibility, attraction, and perception is not blame, not shame, and is certainly not justification. This accountability is ownership, because we ask ourselves, what did we do to be responsible, attract this to ourselves, participate in this perception, and what are we supposed to learn from it? This ownership is what creates the freedom to reclaim, remember, remind, and recollect our power, the infinite amount of power that we are connected to and through. Blaine, the first lesson that we're going to teach, and if anybody wants the replay of this training, and Blaine's going to have a Q&A session afterwards, has graciously volunteered his time for everyone to do hot seat coaching, to answer anything that you want. Just email me. David means beloved at D, first initial. Meltzer means servant. Email me, david@dmeltzer.com. Get the exercises, the guides, and the replay of this training. Reclaim our power. Blaine, the lesson number one is that responsibility or accountability is power.
Yeah.
And the moment that we take accountability for our own lives is the moment we gain or regain the power to take control. Because once we take control by learning and seeking the light, the love, and the lessons where nobody else can find it, it is accountability that will shift us from victimhood to victorhood or leadership. So instead of waiting for someone else to save us, solve us, to recognize us, acknowledge us, for the ability that we have to influence some way the outcomes or better in our lives, that somehow the only control that we can have is not through our actions, but through our accountability of learning from those actions of what did we do to be responsible? What did we do to attract it? What did we do to participate in this perception? And what are we supposed to learn from it? Blaine, you understand power and the infinite amount of energy and power that we have through intuition, inspiration, and intelligence. How does this fall onto you when we talk about the relationship between accountability and power?
It's a great question, and it's framed, and I like the way that you position it around power. Yeah, power is the ability to generate movement. I'll just kind of put it very simply, generate movement. From a leadership perspective, leaders cause movement. We lose and diffuse our power when we start taking responsibility for things that are not ours. I mean, yeah, the idea here, and then I'll step into some Stoic philosophy with this. Stoic philosophers or people that work with Stoic philosophy are distinguished by one policy as an everyday matter. And it's a refusal to worry about things that are beyond their control or that are otherwise, getting other people worked up. I'm responsible for what I have the ability to influence, to actually work with. Today's actions are tomorrow's future states. So I want to be responsible for the actions I'm taking today. And are they consistent with the kind of movement I need to produce in my life to generate the results that I say I want? There's going to be stuff that happens out there that is beyond my control. I'm not responsible for it. I'm not even necessarily accountable for it. But what I can do is take responsibility for the actions I'm taking in the face of things that are going on around me, whether it's the economy or political environment or whatever it might be. What I can influence and what I can actually leverage, what I can cause movement around is what I have control over, beginning with how I see what it is that's in front of me.
And within the context of anything infinite, power, intelligence, intuition, energy, inspiration, lies a paradigm shift of those that believe that they have to go get it instead of those that believe and identify where they're interfering with it. In the context of accountability and power, where do people interfere with this power?
The interference takes place all the time. I wrote a book called Stop Drifting, Start Living. And it was based off of some of the work that Napoleon Hill did in Outwitting the Devil, the book that he wrote back in the 1930s and didn't get published until the early 2000s. I mean, there was about a 75-year gap.
Published in 1938 and published in 2011.
There you go. Yeah. And the reason for that was because he identified where the interference comes from. And it's the influence that people accept from outside sources that determine their future, as opposed to owning that their future is their responsibility. It's not my church, it's not my society, it's not my government, it's my responsibility to live the life that I have, and nobody else can do that but me. So the interference comes when I start handing power over and control over to outside sources. That's probably the easiest way to identify that.
It's so true. And it's even worse. A lot of times it's off a perceived identity, one that doesn't even exist, as well as every other perception. If anybody would like the exercise of how accountability is power, please, and what interferes with that power, please email me. David means beloved, D, first initial, Meltzer means servant. Let me be your beloved servant. Email me for the exercises, guides, and replay, david@dmeltzer.com. Lesson number 2 is something I'd love to send to everyone. It's called the results formula. Blaine, every result we experience begins with a thought. The thought becomes that perception we were just discussing. Perceptions become a meaning that we have power to give it, and that meaning becomes behaviors. And as we categorize behaviors, our outcomes are created by the way that we think, perceive, mean, or interpret and behave. And that's how we respond to the uncontrollable around us. And as a results formula is a better definition of how to detach from results, is really a behavioral formula that what we think about turns into perceptions. Perceptions are meaning, which we control, and meaning creates behaviors, and categorizing behaviors as aligned in our divine direction or our power, or interfering with our divine direction or power, is a way that we experience the same interference. So many people experience things that are the exact same, but they see them or give meaning to them differently. And it all starts with the way they thought, because as you taught me years and years and years ago, everything happens twice, once in the thought and once in the meaning. And so as others see the feedback, which nobody likes feedback in the present, all of these behaviors end up differing because their thoughts differ, perception differ, meanings differ. Of course, then the behavior is different. And guess what? formula, if your thoughts differ, your perception differ, your meaning differ, and your behaviors differ, guess what's going to differ as well? The results. And there's the subtleties of success, the margin of fulfillment, passion, purpose, and profitability is I can look directly, as Napoleon Hill taught us, directly at the thoughts, which led to the perceptions, which led to the meaning, which led to the behaviors. And I can guarantee I can show you why quantitatively you have better or more aligned divine thoughts, results than others. We cannot consistently outperform our thoughts, perceptions, meanings, and behaviors. It is impossible. How can we, though, take advantage of this results formula? It's easy to say, but as you know, I always say the simple things to do are simple not to do.
And that's it. And again, we lull ourselves into complacency. We get lulled by the attraction to comfort. And the human organism actually values comfort. We code it as safety. And things that are comfortable oftentimes are not going to be allowing me to grow. Growth requires extending beyond boundaries. When I start, my grandmother talked about growing pains. And I think growing pains are a great example of what we're talking about with this. Part of the results formula has to do with being willing to be uncomfortable, to get out of bed at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning and go take that jog, go take that run. Even though Marcus Aurelius talked about in Meditations, his diary, about wanting to pull the cover over his head because it was cold outside. And he was the emperor of Rome. He was the most powerful person in the world. Nobody would have begrudged him that. But he said, no, I've got something that I need to be doing. I'm here for a purpose. Nobody else can do my purpose. So he would get out of bed. That's what it takes, is being willing to step into that discomfort. And that's also what I think separates professionals from amateurs. Professionals will go, and you do a lot of work in your career and also currently with professional athletes. And these are people that have actually gone that extra mile. And that extra mile, there's almost nobody on that road.
That's why we call it the empty mile.
That's exactly right. And that's where the juice is. That's where you actually begin being as successful as you've dreamed about being.
No doubt. If you would like the results formula, I'd love to send it to you along with the replay of the training. The results formula, email me. David means beloved at D, first initial. Meltzer means servant. David at dmeltzer.com. Let me be your beloved servant. Email me. All right. Lesson number 3. My mom used to tell me, stop going below the line. Leaders never live below the line. Stop blaming, shaming, and justifying everything. Start leading, son. Blame, shame, and justification keeps us from focusing in on what we cannot control. Leadership, truly, living above the line leadership, focuses on what we can do next and what we learned from the failures, mistakes, setbacks, defining moments of our past. When we blame, shame, and use justification on the economy, competition, timing, resources, or even worse, other people's opinion, we surrender our ability, our capability to create the change that we want. Growth, as your grandma says, begins where these excuses end. Why do people feel a need to blame others, to live in shame and justify what they're doing? Why can't we just, in human nature, enjoy that consistent, persistent pursuit of our potential by learning the lessons of our mistakes? We are made from our mistakes.
I think part of the reason that people default to blame and to excuse and to reason and justification has to do with some sense of identity. And it's very subjective and very subtle as well. Far more people on this planet are actually identifying through their behaviors, their attitudes, and their thoughts as victims. They identify as victims. They behave as victims. It did it to me. The economy is doing it to me. If it wasn't for X, if it wasn't for Y, I would be. And that's an identity question. So one of the ways we begin to move beyond that is we start monitoring language, and language, just internal language. Where do I feel like I need to blame something? Where do I need to feel as if I'm going to take this excuse? It was raining outside. Well, I'm blaming the weather for my lack of movement. The weather is the weather. And going back to lesson 1 and 2, it's how I code it, the meaning I'm making up about it. And that meaning is informed in large part by my sense of identity. Who am I? Am I the kind of a person who can perform even in adverse situations, or do I pull the covers over my head? It's an identity question.
And we never will overachieve our own self-image. That is part of the conduit of blame, shame, and justification. Once again, taking control by learning from the failures, mistakes. You are made from your mistakes. If you would like the made from the mistakes exercise for lesson number 3, stop living in blame, shame, and justification. Live above the line and start being a leader. Give and email me, david@dmeltzer.com. Lesson number 4 in reclaiming our power is understanding not only fear, but the response that we have to the uncertainty that creates fear, the fear that creates a need to defend or control or even prove ourselves. And fear, it often disguises itself in procrastination, indecision, or feeling overwhelmed, this rationalization of blame, shame, and justification, even self-sabotage. And if we don't identify how we respond to that need to defend, prove, and control, it will quietly control us. It will quietly control our divine direction. When we delay taking action because we are afraid of other people's opinions, of criticism, failure, setbacks, mistakes, rejection, uncertainty, or loss, it will only cause hesitation. And as we both know, it is alignment, action, and adjustment that creates the aggregation, acceleration, and compounding results that we desire or better. This is where momentum lies, with the relationship between fear, the response of fear, and this control or claim that we have, or reclaim of power. What influences, though, Blaine, our decisions? And when we fail to recognize or identify why we procrastinate, why we feel overwhelmed, why we go to blame, shame, justification, or even why we self-sabotage.
The purpose of the mind is to protect the ego. The purpose of the mind is to protect my self-image. And so my thoughts, oftentimes out of conscious awareness, my thoughts, how I describe something determines how I feel about it, which generates my behavior. Where does that description process exist? Well, it exists mostly out of my awareness. There's physiologically, when you examine what fear feels like in the body, you get elevated heart rate, breathing moves up, palms get sweaty, eyes dilate. There's all kinds of this stuff that kind of goes on physiologically. The exact same physiological response is present with excitement. Excitement will generate the exact same physiological response that fear will. The only difference is how I'm coding it, how I describe it in my mind. And if the purpose of the mind is to protect, it's usually protecting me from imagined consequences. What if I actually turned the page and said, this could get exciting, this could be really exhilarating? It's literally a function of how I take responsibility for how I'm thinking. This is how I reclaim my power. Most of what we fear in life never occurs. It never occurs. And we are run by it nonetheless. So I want to be able to take charge of my description process. When I notice I've got something coming up, I kind of go, okay, how did I describe that? This is where emotional intelligence comes into play. I notice the emotion. What was the source? What was the imagined scenario that was going on? So I practice. I literally begin to practice interrupting the patterned way that I would typically respond. Interrupt the pattern, I can put something new in place.
And we'll discuss here in lesson 5 coming up. Before we do, discuss the consciousness versus the mind, and how the differentiator between the mind and consciousness work. And the two types of consciousness is we have witness consciousness, and then of course immersive consciousness, collective consciousness, this overwhelming consciousness. But if you would like to understand the fear response of fear, the disguises of fear exercises, Email me, David means beloved, at D is my first initial, Meltzer means servant. Let me be your beloved servant. Please, I will email you the exercises, guides, my books. You can get the replay to this training, david@dmeltzer.com. Lesson number 5, Blaine. I was mentioning the difference between the mind and the conscious, which brings up how do we support the inputs of the conscious from the mind? Because the mind's working while you're sleeping. So you're not conscious when you sleep. You have your subconscious and your unconscious, but you're not conscious. And there's no witness consciousness when you sleep. There's the mind telling you to protect itself, to prove itself, to control what's going on outside of you. And so we have to have different mechanisms in order to not only distinguish between mind and consciousness, but to clear the consciousness from what the mind's bullshit is throwing at it to defend, prove, or control. Because adversity is always there and challenges are always there. And the event itself is not the problem. It's the meaning that we attach to it. It's what the mind says about it. And then the conscious goes ahead and it creates some transference of the thought into perception, into meaning, and then what worse, into behaviors that aren't aligned, that are interfering with where we want to be. So when a mistake, a setback, or a failure occurs, we repeat that story repeatedly, especially in our subconscious, which is constantly correct our behaviors, both in a conscious level, but also in unconscious competency that creates more and more resistance, accelerates us in the wrong direction, creates separation, inferiority, superiority, anger, frustration, guilt, resentment, worry. It creates emotional attachment. And so if we want to take accountability while living in resistance, it's impossible. And so for me, I created this cancel, clear, connect, which says when a thought comes from the mind that is not aligned with my divine direction, I say cancel, either inside my head or outside. If words, which are created by thoughts or feelings or belief, I cancel. But if they become repetitive, if they keep replaying, I know it's part of my subconscious, which means it's going to keep repeating itself even when I sleep, even when I'm not aware of it. So I create a clear mechanism, clear my mind, clear it of that subconscious. Let's change or replace that negative interfering thought, which leads to perception, which leads to meaning, which leads to behavior, with something that is aligned with the divine. But then there's certain things, Blaine, which is where my question lies. There's certain things that I cancel all the time, I clear, but the patterns keep on coming up. Now I know it's part of my genetic and energetic inheritance. It's part of my unconscious competency. It's hard-coded into David Meltzer. And so I need to find a way to connect to my source and have the patience, the gratitude, the forgiveness, and the accountability to dissipate and dissolve that energetic interference, which may take years. I can think of one circumstance that was external to me, a relationship that really damaged and hurt me and my family, which carried with it blessings and lessons, but it took 9 years. 9 years of connectivity work, of shifting my energy beyond the conscious that said, oh, I'm so grateful that happened, beyond the subconscious that was telling me that you're going to learn lessons from this and you'll be okay. But it was stuck in my unconscious competency. I would dream about this person pulling out his fingernails, pouring Tabasco on his fingers, while I was consciously telling everyone, oh, I'm so glad it happened, subconsciously sleeping fine. But I knew energetically that feeling wasn't lying to me. How do you help shift energy? Is there some sort of modality, methodology, or meditation that you use to allow us to have the gratitude, forgiveness, and accountability, the patience to allow energy to shift in an unconscious competency?
I'll talk about it in the context of the empty mile.
Yep.
And to fill in the empty mile, forgiveness is accompanied by true forgiveness, is accompanied by forgetfulness. I begin to forget the imprinted hurt, the imprinted outrage, the imprinted violation. So true forgiveness will generate forgetfulness. So it now becomes a neutral event in my life. Now, how do you do that? Well, that's where the empty mile comes into play here. You spent 9 years. And this is why a lot of people don't reclaim their power in the way that they could reclaim their power, because they're not willing to step into that 9-year process. It took me, however many years to develop this subliminal background noise that runs me. And if it took me 15, 20 years to develop that, for me to think that just a recognition that it's present is going to eliminate it is crazy. Yeah, the way that we rewire the mind is through repetition. Yeah, and literally biologically, we start carving out new circuits, pathways that wire together, fire together. And when you begin that repetitional process, you begin to carve out new pathways. But it takes time to actually do that. The mind is plastic, the brain is plastic, more precisely. And taking advantage of that plasticity, first of all, recognizing it, and secondly, being able to start engaging practices. So for you, as an example, and I love the example that you give there, you would catch yourself thinking about it. You would notice that I'm still dreaming about this. So it's impossible for me to take responsibility while I'm still living in resistance.
Yeah, you got to release it, and
you got to release it.
The mind to the brain to the mind is like, or the mind to the brain is like time to a clock.
Exactly.
And we got to be able to use that. If you would like the cancel, clear, and connect exercise that will change your life consciously, subconsciously, and unconsciously, email me, David@dmeltzer.com. David means beloved. D, first initial. Meltzer means servant. Let me send you this extraordinary exercise, David@dmeltzer.com. The last lesson, Blaine, before I let you take Q&A, is owning our future. Now, it's one thing about giving meaning to the past, one thing about living in the present, but a lot of people get confused when I talk about owning our future, because David, you told me the future is uncertain. How can we own uncertainty? And the future we're creating is determined by what? The behaviors that we have today. And the responsibility, the accountability is demonstrated through daily behaviors, including 5 levels of intention. What we do, say, think, feel, and believe indicate our behavior aligned in our divine direction. Every behavior we tolerate that isn't aligned, every conversation we avoid, opportunity we ignore, becomes part of our future results, or better, or worse, depending on whether it's aligned with or interfering with. So possibility becomes probability, probability perception, perception meaning, meaning becomes behaviors, behavior becomes reality. That's our future. We got to know what we want, who we can help, who can help us, how to get that done, and prioritize accordingly. But for me, it's the non-negotiable behaviors that create 90% of my future. Knowing that gives me ease, that only 10% will be 12 hours of my awake time, trying to figure out the circumstances, doing my best, learning lessons, and having fun. That's going to get me to where I want to be. Real quickly, because I want to make sure we're on time for your Q&A. For you, is there a mantra? Is there a mindset that you use? I use the what, the who, the how, and the now in order to get me there to reclaim the power of your future.
My actions today determine my future tomorrow. I mean, it literally doesn't get any simpler than that. I just planted a bunch of zinnias in our garden, and they require water. So my actions today will generate that future zinnia garden, growing. If I don't water today, the seeds are not going to germinate, and I won't have zinnias, and my wife will be upset.
Yes, you will. And happy wife, happy life is exercise number 6. In other words, own your future by your behaviors. Know this. And if you would like to own your future, email me, get the replay, the guides, the exercises from today of all 6 lessons. The replay is especially valuable. Things don't sink in the first time. I promise you. You got to be repetitive and honest here, which is annoying. I know that. Email me, David@dmeltzer.com. Remember, most successful people are not those with perfect circumstances. They're people who consistently, persistently pursue their potential through accountability, not blame, shame, and justification. They don't use excuses. They never use blame and justification. They take action over that, and they grow over complacency. Leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes, and champions all face adversity. So do you. What separates all of us is our willingness to own the response, to claim our power rather than surrender to it. Accountability is not a burden to learn from. It's a superpower. The moment we own our thoughts, our perceptions, our meanings, and our behaviors, we own our choices, which means we own our future. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Blaine Bartlett's a friend of mine, so my future is so bright I have to wear shades. BlaineBartlett.com. I want to thank you so much for joining me. This has been an incredible training. Our weekly Napoleon Hill Institute training, Reclaim Our Power. David at dmeltzer.com. Get my books, guides, exercises, and replays. I will send them to you. I'll pay for shipping. I'll pay for whatever you need. David at dmeltzer.com. Just email me. Blaine, I'm going to hand the controls off to you, and I'm going to go eat lunch. God bless you. I will see you all later. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Let me bring the volume up here, Nick. There we go. Okay.
Beautiful. All righty. So for all of our friends here in the Breakfast with Champions, the greatest room and community on Clubhouse, of course, we are going to transition to the Q&A session with the double B. That is Blaine Bartlett. You can, of course, reach him, BlaineBartlett.com. But with today's Q&A session, for all of our friends that are joining us on the webinars, we are multicasting on all platforms. Please make sure to put your questions into the chat. Of course, for any of our friends here in the Breakfast with Champions, if you have a question for Blaine today, that's the double B, Blaine Bartlett. All you got to do is use your hand icon in the lower left-hand corner of your screen to request to join the stage, and we will, of course, bring you up. Now, without further ado, Mr. Blaine, for our first question of the day, I'm going to pass it over to, I think, what is truly one of your all-time favorites, which is Princess Ali, as we call her. So, Princess Ali, great to see you here as always. Happy Wednesday. Unmute yourself and kick us off with the first question of the day.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Ali.
Awesome. So, Blaine, my question today, great training as always, is around the fact that you've taught that awareness is the first step in reclaiming our power. But many of us have patterns where we're fully aware of, yet they still persist.
Mm-hmm.
So what has life taught you about the difference between becoming aware of a pattern and actually becoming free from it?
It has to do, Ollie, and it's a great question. Awareness is the first step, but it's a fundamental step. Nothing will change unless I become aware of and acknowledge what's in play. The next step is to, and this is where attention or energy will follow attention, not intention. I want to pay attention to the choices that I have available to me. And I want to start taking action on choices I've never used before. If I default to a choice I've made before, I'm almost certain to generate the same kind of result again. I want to begin choosing things that are unfamiliar, choosing things that I'm uncertain about how they're going to work out, choosing actions, choosing ways of engaging, choosing ways of having a conversation, choosing people to go up to that I feel uncomfortable with. And it's in that discomfort that I will begin to discover, literally new ways of being. And new ways of being will generate new ways of doing, and new ways of doing will generate a different result.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if you don't mind, one other layer to that
is please.
With fear and excitement, sometimes that feeling is the same in the body. So how do you discern with that uncertainty if that's a signal to proceed with courage or a signal to pause and reconsider?
That it's going to be situational, obviously, but I want to pay attention to this is where the whole notion of emotional intelligence comes into play. What what is the source of the experience I'm having, whether I'm coding it as excitement or whether I'm coding it as fear? And each one of those labels will give me some guidance into what the source is. So if it's excitement, maybe it's something that was delightful in my early years that was similar in terms of the way that it's actually presenting today. If it's something that I experienced being fearful, maybe there's something in my history where there was a event that was similar to this that I got shamed, I got corrected, I got castigated, I got whatever it may have been. But there is going to be some event that I assigned a meaning to back then that is being carried forward, and it's showing up physiologically as either fear or excitement. But I can use the sensation, the physical sensation, to begin to trace it back a bit. And if I can decouple it from that original meaning making process, now I've got some freedom about how I can actually leverage what's in front of me.
Incredible. Great takeaways. Thank you, Blaine.
You bet, Ali. Thank you for the question. Nick, you there?
Nick, are you here?
Yes, thank you so much for your patience. For our next question of the day, I'm going to pass it over to Marco Antonio. Marco, my friend, good to see you here. Unmute yourself and carry us on.
Likewise, Nick. Good to see you, Blaine.
You bet. You too, Marco.
All right, cool. Well, Blaine, the timing's really good because, yesterday I was on the phone with somebody that I love and respect, but he just kind of recently fell into this negative space. I visited him for a while, but I couldn't stay on the phone with him, and I couldn't stay there with him for very long, So my question today is, if we know somebody that is currently blaming life, the economy, the president, circumstances, the future, what kind of practical advice can we share with them to just snap them back into power without sugarcoating it?
2x4 alongside the head. That usually works.
Right?
Oh my God, Gigi, you look like you have a juicy mango. I want to drink the juice from a juicy.
Okay. Yeah, Marco, facetiousness aside. I've got a couple of friends that I've had that experience with as well. And the thing that they're usually unconscious about, the consequence of what it is that they're, the consequence of how they're expressing their frustration. That's kind of what's going on there. So one way that you can actually approach this, and it's going to be dependent on the quality and the depth of the relationship, obviously here, but you can actually kind of signal a timeout, saying, I'd love to hear what you're speaking about, and the energy that you're using, or the energy that's present when you're talking about this, suggests to me that you feel as if you're out of control. And here's the way that I'm going to position this. Anger is a secondary emotion. Frustration is a secondary emotion. And I say they're secondary emotions because they're the consequence of feeling out of control in the face of that situation. So one way that you can actually work with them, if you're looking to actually facilitate them getting back on track, is what would be necessary for you to feel more in control in this situation. That would be a great question for them to start exploring. And if there's nothing that they that they literally can come up with, the next question might be, is this something that is literally, and this is where the Stoic philosophy of Epictetus comes into play, is it something that is theirs to take on? I mean, if they're all upset about something that isn't theirs, that doesn't belong to them, they've got actually, they're doing themselves a great disservice by latching onto it. And the idea here is, and Epictetus talks about this in his discourses. There's only one road to happiness, and I'll just quote this directly. Only one road to happiness. Let this rule be at hand, morning, noon, and night. Stay detached from things that are not up to you. Stay detached from things that are not up to you. And it's literally a refusal to worry about things that are beyond their control, or to get worked up about things that are beyond their control. That positions them as positions them as a victim. And there's no power that a victim possesses to change anything. Hope that's useful, Marco.
Man, incredible. Thank you, Blaine. I'm definitely going to digest this. Appreciate you, brother.
You bet, buddy.
Okay, we have another incredible guest up here next with another question. And Blaine, you've also had the pleasure to meet the lovely Marianne Rumbola, as of course she is always with us in Las Vegas when you come to town for the TV show.
Yep.
Marianne, my dear, it was great seeing you yesterday and on Monday. Why don't you unmute yourself and carry us on with the next question?
Thank you. Thank you for always having me. Blaine, I'd like to ask you, right now I have something that I do part-time, bringing a majority of my finances in while I build my other business, which is, of course, my transformational coaching business. And I get into the weeds in my other business because there's a whole team involved. And I'm learning to create, leaning the opposite direction, though I feel a little out of control with all these contractors that I work with. They're constantly changing appointment times. How do I rein in things that I don't have control over in that, so I can focus on my own calendar and efficiency?
Okay, this would be an example of something that you actually do have some semblance of control over if they're contractors. And part of it has to do with how you set the conversation for performance up front. There's a whole model that I work with my clients that has to do with communicating for action. And here's the very short version of this. Most people will organize their interactions with contractors, as an example, around the deliverable, the result. So the condition that they track to is, did they show up on time? Okay, as an example. What you want to be able to do is articulate up front, what are the conditions of satisfaction that you're going to be assessing whether they were ultimately successful in delivering what you wanted. So conditions of satisfaction, you put these in place on the front end. Conditions of satisfaction are going to be, if you're going to be late, as an example, I'm going to expect 24 hours advance notice. There's different things that you can put in place here. The net of it is, what is it that's going to be satisfying to you and to them? So they have a voice in this as well. So you organize everything around conditions of satisfaction, and that becomes the deliverable, not the result. The result is the consequence of successfully handling the conditions of satisfaction along the way.
Okay.
And if you're putting that in, and I've got a whole model that I can give you on this. That would be how that actually ends up working.
Yeah. So just for example, this morning I had meetings with them. I get to property and they're calling me. They're like, listen, you know what? I'm not going to be able to meet you till this afternoon. So that interrupts my whole afternoon. Mm-hmm. And I need to keep on schedule with that project.
Yep.
So it's things like that constantly happening, even though the work, the production, when it is done, is really great work.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is not unusual with contractors, and I don't mean to cast a bad light on contractors at all. But one of the things that you want to be able to do, again, back to the front end conversation, and this is where you put some teeth in the agreement. If you're not going to be here on time, it's going to disrupt my entire process for the day. And there's a consequence to that. And here's what that consequence is. So you let them know, are you aware that there's a penalty clause here? If you cancel at the last moment, there will be a penalty, because I've got to compensate for my use of time here that I don't get to apply someplace else. There's a lost opportunity cost for me because of your dropping the ball.
Yeah. Okay.
So people will give you what they perceive you're willing to settle for.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you're absolutely right. I'm letting them control me a little bit because in Las Vegas, it's so hard to find somebody of quality, you know? And okay, thank you. I appreciate it so much.
You bet.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Marianne. We appreciate the way that you show up each and every day to participate, of course, in this abundant community. And Blaine, want to thank you, as always, for taking the extra time to be of service through this hot seat coaching and Q&A session. For the next question of the day, I'm going to pass it over to the young Desmond, who we always appreciate as well for the way that he shows up. Desmond, my friend, happy Wednesday. Feel free to unmute yourself and keep us moving with the next question.
All right, I appreciate it. Happy Wednesday, everybody. But Blaine, my question today is, how do you personally stay consistent with taking responsibility for your actions when everything around you just feels out of control?
Well, first, honestly, Desmond, and this is not an unusual question, and there is a lot of things that are out of my control in this world today. I have to acknowledge the fact that there is very, 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 very little that I actually have control over. The only thing that I truly have control over are my thoughts, my feelings, my attitudes, and my behaviors. Those are the only four things that I ever have actual control over. Everything else is up for grabs. And metaphorically, and I started learning this years ago when I lived in Japan and I was practicing some martial arts. And one of the and I never became proficient at this by any stretch, but Kyudo, which is Japanese archery. And my sensei at the time, he was teaching me the skill set. So knock the bow and draw the arrow back, and you shoot it to the archery. You shoot it to the target. And he said, "Well, what happens if a wind blows? How are you going to react to not hitting the target, not hitting where you aimed?" And I said, "Well, I'm probably going to get frustrated." And he said, "Well, that is a foolish thing to say, to do and say. You have no control over the wind. What you do have control over is your skill set. What you do have control over is how much you practice your skills. What you do have control over are your thoughts that now are present when that gust of wind comes along that you had no control over, that blew the arrow off course." That's essentially what we're dealing with, Desmond. The more I can land on the simple truth that it's my behaviors, my thoughts, my attitudes, and my thinking, or my feelings that I have control over, my perceptions, all of those sorts of those are the things that I can actually work with. Marcus Aurelius would talk about in his meditations book, the obstacle. The obstacle is the way. And what he was talking about there was not going, "Oh, isn't it a blessing that I've got this?" No, it's not a blessing. This sucks. What is the obstacle is the way. What he's talking about as the way is that because that obstacle is present today, and if I still desire that outcome that I said I wanted, I'm going to learn, and this is what the obstacle presents to me, is the opportunity to learn something different than I've never learned before. The obstacle is the way to learning greater resilience. It's the way to learning a different skill set. It's the way to learning a different way of approaching a problem. The obstacle is the way doesn't mean it's a blessing, and let's just kind of sing kumbaya. That's not the case at all. So that idea of being really intentional about what is it that's in my control, given that most control is an illusion. We'd like to control the external world. We don't. The wind is going to blow.
Thank you. That is such great advice. And obviously it's a lot to unpack. So that'll definitely take up most of my day today, figuring out how to wrap my head around that.
Okay. Thanks for the question, Desmond.
Of course. Thank you for being here.
We appreciate you, Desmond. And Mr. Blaine, as we wind down the final 9 minutes here of our Q&A or hot seat coaching session with you, we got time for about 2 more questions. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Jared Walsh, who has joined us here on stage, a new friend, a new fresh face. So Jared, it's great to see you here. Happy Wednesday. Why don't you unmute yourself and keep us rolling with the next question for the Double B.
Thank you very much, Nick. Blaine, thank you for being here, and happy Wednesday, everyone. Blaine, my question today is about confidence, and Oftentimes, it is said that confidence comes with repetition and practice. But my question for you today is, have you found that confidence comes before action, or does confidence only develop after taking action despite fear?
Great question, Jared. Confidence, I mean, just in the way that we label it, implies that it happens after the fact. And you don't necessarily have to take action in order to have confidence. If you can imagine the scenario unfolding the way that you'd like it to unfold, that vividly imagined reality can be enough to actually position you to step out onto that stage with confidence. You know, if that makes sense. I'm putting this in a speaking, kind of metaphor here. Most people are scared to death of public speaking, and they're usually afraid of, looking foolish, forgetting a line, whatever it might be. So their confidence, because they're fixated on all the things that could likely go wrong. Yeah, and they start to feel a lack of confidence. Now, if you've been public speaking for a long time, you've got a whole experience base that says, nobody shot me, I'm still here. Okay, that sort of a thing. But if I'm starting out, in order to actually, be confident, I guess, in the way that we're looking at this right now, I can imagine everything going exactly like I'd like it. I just, when I was a gymnast in university, I would, before I would go out and throw my routine, I would vividly, literally vividly imagine, and you've probably seen this if you watched any kind of gymnastics on television. Before the gymnast goes out there, you can actually see them moving their body, but they're moving their body in concert with the moves that they're actually going to be using in that routine. Now, they're not on the mat or they're not on the bar actually going through it, but there's muscles that are involved. They're engaging. That kind of vivid sensation wires the brain in a way that says, you got this. You got this. And that's one way that you build confidence before you've actually had the experience, the quote unquote real experience.
Thank you very much, Blaine. I will definitely make sure to imagine my success in the future.
Okay. It's not just a picturing, though. It literally, the vividness makes a difference, Jared. You have to feel it. You actually have to feel it.
And maybe to add a layer to that question, if we have enough time, how do you necessarily practice feeling that envisioned success?
The way that happens is when you've actually cut out external distractions, and the picture becomes so vivid that it would be almost impossible to delineate it from a real, quote unquote, real experience. You're in the picture. The picture lives, and you can feel it, you can smell it, you can touch it, you can hear it, all of those things start to come into play. And literally, when I'm talking here about moving my body, when I was, before I'd go on to throw my routine, I would actually feel my body moving. Now, it wasn't an intentional movement, but my body would just start moving in concert with what I had practiced in the gym. You're literally making it vivid in a very real sense. We've got 5 senses. I want to engage as many of them as I can in my imagining, not just pictorially.
Crystal clear. Thank you very much, Blaine.
You bet.
Thank you so much, Jared, for the incredible question. And for our final question on today's Napoleon Hill Institute training extended Q&A session with the double B, that is Blaine Bartlett. Of course, you can reach him, blainebartlett.com. Blaine, it is time for your favorite friend in our community. That's your 2 favorite letters. And of course, that is GG. So GG, why don't you unmute yourself and close us out with the final question?
Hello, happy Wednesday. Thank you, Blaine. So my question is, how can we reconcile the paradox of genius is a young man's game and wisdom comes with age? Because I noticed that, like, the more I grow, the wiser I become. And Yeah, and you and David keep saying that. So
Well, I'm not sure that paradox gets reconciled necessarily. Yeah. If you would ask me in my 20s, I knew everything, and uh, and I acted as if I knew everything. Um, there's something that does come along through the living of life where then I think this is actually how I actually reconcile. This is actually not so much a reconciliation, but it's how wisdom begins to be generated for an individual. Is they begin questioning what they thought they knew, and in that questioning of what I thought to be true, I discover that there's more truth to be seen, more truth to be explored, and that's where wisdom starts to come into play. When I was younger, I had a lot of knowledge that I worked with. The application of that knowledge is where wisdom actually comes into play. And it's in the application that I start learning how off base I was sometimes with what I thought I knew from a knowledge perspective, because yeah, it didn't meet what was needed in the moment. The knowledge was there, but I didn't have the wisdom to know how to apply it. And I think that's actually, that paradox comes with experience.
yeah, I noticed that in me every single day. So thank you.
You bet. I wish there was a shortcut for that, but I don't know that there is.
Nobody found it yet, so
Not yet.
I'll keep searching.
Okay.
Thank you so much, not only to Gigi, Marco, Desmond, Princess Ali, Jared, Marianne, and everybody for your incredible questions today, but I want to share some extra gratitude and appreciation to the Double B, that is Blaine Bartlett, for, of course, taking the time to be of service and continue to invest in this community. Blaine, I know people can reach you at blainebartlett.com. Where else can people inquire with you to get in touch and to continue on leveraging the wealth of knowledge and experience that you have, as I know you always are looking to help?
My LinkedIn profile, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I'm usually posting at least once a day, different material, but I can be reached there. My email, you can email me directly at bbartlett@avatar-resources.com. Avatar Resources is my company. And, certainly blainebartlett.com. There's a way to get a hold of me specifically there as well. So take advantage of that, and welcome any inquiry. Certainly, anything that we've looked at this week on this training. If you got a question about it, feel free to give me a call.
Beautiful. And I know that you will be joining us next week for the next edition of our Napoleon Hill Institute training between, of course, its chairman, David Meltzer, as well as the Double B, Blaine Bartlett. As a quick reminder to everybody, if you would like to guide an exercise from today's training, all you need to do is email David directly. Let David be your beloved servant by emailing him, david@dmeltzer.com. Once again, that is just david@dmeltzer.com to get the guided exercise from today's training. And of course, we would love to invite but not obligate you, as we are on the road over 200 cities every single year. As we come into each and every one of those cities, we add on what we call a car wash, which is the addition of a community meetup, holding court, or even one of our VIP dinners for charity. So come and join us this weekend, as we are going to be in Chicago, Illinois for another stop on the car wash tour. Then from there, we will be in Newport Beach, California with Tim Story and Marie Diamond and Austin Keene and so many others for the June edition of our mastermind, plus a car wash. Then from there, it'll be off to Viva Las Vegas for NBA Summer League. Then from there, we will be over to New York City for Fanatics Fest 2026 plus car wash. Then back at the greatest stadium in the world, SoFi Stadium, for the July edition of our mastermind. Before then, we head over to Miami, Florida with Lionel Messi, the GOAT himself, as we are going to be at the Inter Miami CF game, have a game field suite with all the bells and whistles, adding on a car wash there in Miami. Then it'll be across the pond to London for our UK Investor Mastermind series, and then rounding things out in Breckenridge, Colorado for another stop on the car wash tour. Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's way too much to keep up with, which is intentional, and that's why we created our text community, to give you the reminders on where we're going to be be, and these over 200 invitations, but not obligations a year. So if you would like to be invited, just text us at area code 949. Next 3 digits are 298. Last 4 digits are 2905. Finally, closing out with today's training with the reminder from David to be more interested than interesting, and be kind to your future self and do good deeds. Hit it, Gigi.
Hey! 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 Oh, hey! Wanna know where David's gonna be? Get invites, updates, and community. When he's in your city, you won't miss a thing. Just text the number, let your phone ring, 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 ring. 949-298-2905. That's 949-298-2905. Events, connection, and opportunity, all in one place. Come join the community. So text it now, don't wait in line. 949-298-2905. That's 949-298-2905.
They discovered it, they read it, and they applied it. It's the golden thread that connects the titans of the self-development industry, the source that spawned millions of millionaires, the original blueprint to success.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Think and Grow Rich.
Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's a classic. A classic.
And I love Think and Grow Rich. I love it. It's right here. I mean, it's one of my favorite books of all time.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
This material is what changed my life. This is the material I study every day. From being an immigrant woman, coming from poverty, and really coming to America and literally achieving the American dream. I can't even tell you how grateful I am for this man, for what he did for me and my family.
Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
People don't realize is that when we let our ego get in our way, ego is the loss, the fear of loss. So need to be right, the need to be offended, the need to be hurt, fearful. When that trajectory changes, what happens is you continually go the wrong way. So my job as a coach is to say, let's get into the enjoyment of the direct pursuit of my potential. Right? And so when the light went on, it was not about the potential of making money and being an entrepreneur, which is one of my specialties. And I said to him, look, this is an opportunity now to show how great you really are. We can't let the outside voices, right, determine our success. The happiness that we have comes within. Why are you going to give that control to somebody else?
Thoughts become things. And I always wonder, why did no one teach us this? Why did we not learn this in school? Why did we not learn this from our families? If you make your study a priority, your life will change.
And I came up with 4 really valuable things that I took stock in. And the first one was gratitude. Simple gratitude. Although I grew up with nothing, I was always grateful. Throughout the whole process of consistently, persistently pursuing my potential, I was grateful. It made my past better, my present brighter, and my future even brighter than that. In fact, I tell people all the time, if you want to change your life, change your employee's life, your family life, it's very simple. 2 words, say thank you.